Hi, I'm Danger Dan Jers, the host and GM of the D&D Real Play podcast, D&D Dark. Join us on Wednesdays for an absurd, over-the-top comedy horror adventure, starring some of history's most infamous monsters.
I'm Ben Magnet. I play Mary Frankenstein, our barbarian.
I am Daniel Cruz. I am playing Imhotep the Mummy, our cleric.
I'm Jordan, and I play Larry Talbot, a lycanthropic warlock.
I am Grayson, playing Jet Griffin, the Invisible Man, the party's rogue.
I am Aaron. I play the Phantom of the Opera, our bard.
For more information, go to dndarkpodcast.com and listen to us anywhere you find podcasts.
Listen up, nerds. We're doing pen and paper stuff. The Paladins of Podcast are back. And rolling the dice on new content, upgrades to nothing, and a few missing pages from the rule books. Introducing Joshua Johnson, the man behind... Wait, where did those notes go? Follow Rob and Josh as they navigate the Outer Planes and anywhere in between on the Epic Table Games audio show.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Epic Table Games audio show with Paladins of Podcast, Rob. And today, I'm actually here with special guests again, and I'm going to let them take the floor and introduce themselves. It's a very, very big honor to have you guys. Go ahead and let everybody know who you are.
Thank you so much, Rob. Hi, I'm Jay Dragon. I am the editorial director at Possum Creek Games, the author behind Wanderhome and one of the creators behind Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast. I'm a game designer. I like games about community magic, impossible things. And I'm super excited to be here with my business partner.
Hi, I'm Ruby Lavin. I'm the art director at Possum Creek. I don't really like games of any kind. But I do really like making beautiful things, so that is what I do professionally.
Grubby hates games. She only likes long-form improvised LARPs and dialect once a year.
True. Yeah.
Interesting.
Very a connoisseur.
I wanted to bring you on specifically to talk about Wanderhome. I know that you guys had a really big year this year with Gen Con and the Annie Awards. Congratulations. That's really, it's a massive success.
Yeah, thanks. It was crazy.
Yeah. That and the nebulas, and just a lot of people are really interested in the thing we've made, which is, the highest honor you can ask for when you make a thing.
That's absolutely true. And I'll say I stumbled across the Kickstarter. I want to say it had already been completed last year. And I had initially talked with my co-host from season 1 about it, and I was super interested in it. I loved both the art style and the feel, because personally, I am a kick in the door, blow shit up, and loot the room kind of guy. So this game is not that at all.
No, definitely not.
It speaks to me, which is kind of unique in its own right. It's a game that, right off the bat, really suits my wanderlust, my want to travel and just sort of take things easy and kind of chill. And that's what I really like about it. But it's different than so many things that are out. So for both of you guys, kind of, where did you get your start in tabletop games, and how did you end up here at Wanderhome?
Okay, well, we both met at a live-action role-playing camp as children. So that is how we got our start role-playing.
In my memory, which I admit is a very flawed memory, I feel like I think our first interaction was that I was 12, you were like 15 or 16, you were a harpy, and you killed me on top of a rock and ate my heart.
Yeah.
With like your gang of harpy girls, and that was kind of the tone for our friendship.
Yeah, still happening.
Still happening. We became I got into tabletop games in college after I'd been LARPing for a while. I played a bit of 4th edition D&D, and then I got into Monster Hearts, and it's all down, right? Like that's the gateway, right? You're on a slippery slide towards the weird stuff. And then Grubby and I, we started working on our first project, Sleepaway, If I remember right, it was literally like I needed a graphic designer for this game I had written. You knew a lot more about art and graphic design than me.
Yeah, I mean, I was like a book designer only at the time. You were like, I have a book that needs designing. And I guess it was before the Kickstarter for Sleepaway. Maybe.
It might have been during, frankly. It might have been during.
It was probably during.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was just going to be your layout designer, but then I had a lot of opinions about like what the book should look like and how the art should be. And we just realized that we made a really good team. So when you started planning Wanderhome, like 10 seconds later, because of how fast you work, you were like, well, we like to tell people the story as though it's like when you're seeing someone and you don't know whether it's official or not. So one day she was like, will you be my business partner for real instead of just someone that I chat with on Facebook for 12 hours a day? And I was like, yes, I will do this with you. We are official.
Yes, we're official. And that was the start of Possum Creek. That was Possum Creek.
That's great. It's very natural, and I think that it shows not just in one project particular, but in all the projects that you guys have worked together through. And I think that in itself speaks volumes because, again, it seems like currently the market is dominated by two big publishers, which is unfair to so many smaller publishers and so many people trying to break in. Having the connection that you two do really helps shine, and it allows the games to really connect with individuals on a more of a personal level. So,
and I think also we're coming at it from such a different angle, right? Like if you look at our backgrounds, I'm, like on a purely game design level, like we're coming from LARP, we're coming from like heavy indie games, right? Like games which, like spark debates about whether or not they count as games, right? Like we're coming from this very kind of like indie, not central environment. And then also artistically, we're not, we in fact explicitly, like if we look at an artist's portfolio and we're like, this looks too much like Dungeons and Dragons, we're not interested, right?
Honestly, I'm so far past that. Like I was looking at artists today and some of them I'm like, this doesn't look like D&D art, but it does look like indie RPG art. Like Cosimo Galuzzi is like amazing and did a lot of work for Lancer. And so anytime something looks a little too much like him, which is again amazing, I'm like, oh, but it's been done.
Looks like Lancer. I
gotta get something that no one would ever put on an RPG. And then we both have like Jay was going to be an art history major at college, and like I am sometimes an illustrator. So we just come at our projects from such a different angle than everybody else is.
Yeah, like I feel like there's such a people make this kind of bizarre fallacy where they look at the companies that are popular and they're like, oh, Dungeons and Dragons is the big thing. If I want to become popular, I want to make something that resembles Dungeons and Dragons. But overwhelmingly, the people who have Dungeons and Dragons aren't looking for another Dungeons and Dragons. They have you have the thing you like, right? Like, if you like chocolate ice cream, I'm not gonna sell you on my I'm not gonna sell you on like my slightly different chocolate ice cream, right? Like it's a weird sell. But if I'm like, hey, do you want to try my like raspberry eclair, right? Like it's a total it's a different. We're talking to a different group of people, right? We're talking to a different community. And I think that's been really critical for helping people like onboard and get excited and get involved, because we're not interested in making anything that looks like Hasbro's got their market, Paizo's got their market. We want to make something that excites people, that is from our artistic, from our literary, from our own personal kind of angle. That's that's just very different than what other people are doing.
I think you guys really nailed it with this one. Art direction, I have to say, I love the painter style. It's got a very beautiful aesthetic to it, and it reminds me of some of the most beautiful art that just sort of fits with me. In fact, one of the things that come to mind is the old oh man, I'm going to butcher the name, the old Okami video game.
Sure. Back in the day.
The wolf. It's got that flow to it where even if you don't see every brushstroke, you feel every brushstroke. And I know that for our listeners in an audio show, it's hard to really describe this in a way that they can visualize it. but damn, the book looks good. And even the interior design, the layout design, it's not packed wall to wall. That's wonderful. There's plenty of open space to breathe.
Yeah.
And it feels like through each page, um, it all reflects upon the tone and feel of the game. And that's something that you don't see very often, something you don't see very frequently with larger publishers. I mean, we're not looking at a 500-page tome right here. This is
Well, what is it? 275.
It's still in comparison to like what D&D puts out. It's pretty small.
Yeah.
It won't in comparison. You can save us bed and breakfast, which is our next project.
Oh God, that's gonna be a tome.
That's all right. So I remember, as you guys had said, that you came from LARP to tabletop games. That seems different than what most people go backwards, I guess.
Yes.
Someone
once I was gonna say someone once described it to me when I was like, explaining my little history to them. They were like, "That's like doing ketamine before trying alcohol," which is a really, I think, intense comparison, but is also, it's definitely in the deep end before you like go through the normal pathway.
A lot of people, when we talk about this, are like, "Listen, I love tabletop games, but I would never LARP. That shit's like weird and for nerds." And I'm like, yeah, that's how I feel in reverse, because like it started with LARP.
It's funny for me. Yeah, when I first started designing, like when I first started playing tabletop games, there was this like little elitist part of me that was like, "Oh, well, this isn't really a game. It's just people describing playing a game, because there's no somatic tactile component, right? You're not out in the woods actually embodying the stuff you're describing it." And then, like I obviously I got into it and I got kind of what was going on. But I think that tactile component, even with the book, right? The book as like an object that sits at the table, right? The book isn't a neutral thing. The book isn't like an invisible thing that isn't at the table. The book's at the table. It's informing how you play. You pick it up and you flip through it, and it makes you feel things at the table. And a lot of
this is why we as a company are never going to stop making physical books. People are like, "Well, you could just do PDFs and do game masters," and we're like, that's not what we do, or whatever.
Right. And
yeah,
I greatly appreciate that. I'm a physical book kind of person. PDF. I mean, bringing electronics to the table. I'm a huge heavy table player, and I have tried LARP. I avoided it for a long time. I tried both vampire and werewolf.
Most LARP's bad, including a lot of vampire and werewolf.
Yeah, we resolved things with rock, paper, scissors, and it was super confusing, and like it was such a bad taste. I couldn't go back and do it again. But I could join the SCA and I could do that. But I guess that's still taking LARP one step farther. But yeah, you're right. The book is both a physical object that I love having at the table, and you do interact with it. You're constantly referencing. You're looking at it. It's the manual. Everything you need. So that philosophy is wonderful. It's not something I've thought about before. I just kind of look at it like this is my support network here.
Yeah, exactly. Like when you're running a game, you want kind of like it's the equivalent of like being able to like pull up a Pinterest mood board, or like pull up references, right? Like the part of the purpose of art in a well-directed RPG is that the art informs the gameplay, right? Like when you're playing and you're trying to describe something, you can flip to a page in the book and be like, "I look like that," or like, "This character looks like that," right? Like the tech, like the images become an immediate like visual shorthand that everyone can use, to discuss and imagine.
But also, like this is a common theme in a lot of our work, is like we got so many artists for Wanderhome because we didn't want there to be like a not a canon, kind of a canon. We didn't want there to be one way that the world was supposed to look, because it's like a free-form RPG. Like everyone's game of Wanderhome is going to be extremely different, and we wanted to have so many different perspectives on the world so that everyone could see like, oh, like you can do whatever you want here. And you have many, many options to draw from your own.
Yeah. Like there's art in Wanderhome that looks very peaceful, and there's art in Wanderhome that looks very tragic. And we want
and there's like painterly art, and there's like cute cartoony art, and whatever you want to do. And that's like very important for us, and we come to be
Now, I will say I was flipping through it shortly before we connected. I got a bad habit of reading multiple different rule books at one time. So
weird, very weird.
Extremely normal.
I think it's normal. Like, for example, not only am I reading through Wanderhome, I'm reading through the Cortex system, and the Cipher system.
Oh yeah, what a bunch of bedfellows.
Yeah. Now, one of those things that a lot of the things that they have in common, they use like a D20 system, but you don't have dice. You use a token system, which is, I'm going to say it's unique in how it's presented, but I've seen things where we use tarot cards or other similar items that are not dice. So it leads me to, did you use a base system for your inspiration here on your rule set?
So Wanderhome is built on the Belonging Outside Belonging system, which was pioneered by Avery Alder and Benjamin Rosenbaum in 2018 with Dream Askew and Dream Apart, which is a fantastic pair of games. I think it's a noteworthy system. In addition to kind of like the very core, like, token exchange process, a big thing that Avery has talked about with that system is there's a philosophical component to it as well, which is why it's called Belonging Outside Belonging, is that in addition to being a system of tokens, it is also that the games that emerge from it tend to be games about outcasts on the periphery forming community kind of against this kind of in kind of trying to find their place in the larger world. Okay. And Wanderhome, I think, takes a more like peaceful and compassionate angle to that in comparison to a lot of other BOB games. But I think it is certainly unique in its scale and scope and notability, right? Like, certainly, like, I adore BOB as a system, but Wanderhome is like an exemplary, like it is a standout member of the genre. And I think that what makes Wanderhome notable is, in addition, so oftentimes in Belonging Outside Belonging, you get a token when you fail, and you spend that token to succeed effectively, right? That's kind of the framing. And in Wanderhome, it's not that. In Wanderhome, you take a token when you make a sacrifice to help someone else, and you spend that token to assert or like, discover or to like, kind of change or to kind of like, project your player's will, yourself as a player into the game to kind of make a more dramatic change. And that removal of failure, the fact that it's a game that is like, there's no combat in the game, but even more broadly, there's no failure framework, right? It's not a game about success and failure, not even fail forward. It's just not a game about success and failure. That I think is kind of what makes the mechanic very like new to a lot of folks, and kind of allows it to get at sort of these other levels of role play that you don't normally get at.
I can agree with that. It's definitely role play heavy, and I love that aspect to it. And I think that as I've spent 20 some years in tabletop games, and as I have developed experience, I've found that I am almost fed up with Dungeons and Dragons. I'm looking for something new, and I've gotten to the point where 30% or less is combat oriented. It's social interactions and storytelling. That's really what I like to see and hear tell. And this game allows me to do that, but it's a hard sell for a lot of my friends and people I generally play with. They have a hard time with a DM-less system, and they don't understand the narrated style of the game. And there's no kicking ass. And I'm trying to tell them, I'm like, yo, just chill, relax, and we're gonna work our way through it. But they don't take it seriously enough. So
Grubby just disconnected. I think she did. I'm gonna send. Oh, she just messaged me. I just have to rejoin the server, so I think she will get back in here in a moment, or we can just cut around. Hello.
There we go. We're back.
Don't
know what that
mystery brownout or something.
Yeah, it's still Power Runner season.
Yeah, it
still
is
raining.
Huh?
Is it still raining? You guys are in New York, right?
Yeah,
it is both in upstate New York right now, and it is thundering. Thank God, because we're in a huge drought.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Wow.
We gotten like an inch in the last 3 hours, I think.
Yeah, that seems true here too. There was a brownout right before this. I was like, ugh. Anyway, your question. Let me just remind myself of the question. Your question was, or your, it was.
I'm working. This is Jay and his business partner Ruby.
Hello.
Thank you.
Hi.
Okay. I gotta work. Love you, Daddy. I love you too. Living household.
Love it.
Thank
Love
you.
it.
It's embarrassing.
No, it's not.
No.
I try really hard to keep them totally separate. I love my kids to death. It's just I never know I know how to introduce them. Like they're so friendly. No stranger danger.
That's a good thing.
Last time I was in a regular campaign, I think it was Fate. I say D&D campaign because I'm not like you people. We played at this guy's house, and he had 2 young kids. And whenever they really wanted to hang out at the table, we would just let them roll for our enemies and just beat the shit out of us.
Yeah,
it's great.
I like it. I mean, they're generally included when we game, and I have
sure.
I've paused my tabletop games because of the whole move and everything.
Of course.
So I think we're picking back up at the end of September, and hopefully the offices and everything is up and running. I'll tell you, last night when we were talking about rain here, we had enough rain. We're in just north of Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
We got hit with it just before you guys did. Our power went out, came on sometime last night. And I think we ended up having, 12 full branches nearly fall on our house.
Jesus.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah. So, at 8 o'clock at night, here I am moving branches to the side of the road. It was not fun.
Oh my God.
Yep.
Yeah. It's crazy.
I'm at my parents' house, usually live in Philly, but to deal with bears up here, they have an electrified dumpster. And so last night as we were going to bed, my dad was like, oh shit, the dumpster is off because the power is off. How do we get... Anyway, we ran a long extended cord from a generator to a dumpster.
Oh my God.
A bug zapper for bears?
Yeah.
Gotta keep them out somehow.
That is a riot.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh man. Oh, I could talk about general life stuff. Trying to stay focused can be a problem.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Let's find the thread. You're talking about how it's difficult to gather people to play, or kind of mobilize them. To convince them. That's the phrase that I just completely... It said mobilize instead. I think that, first off, if it helps at all, Wanderhome is GM optional. So if you want to play it with a GM, it's got room for that. It was designed without one, but I certainly find for integrating new people and kind of bringing them in from Dungeons and Dragons, or that kind of, those systems that are kind of in that world.
They like someone to do the NPC voices for them.
Yes, exactly. It helps when it helps to at least to start to get integrated, to be like, someone's doing this for me.
But I think the main way we convince people is, you were saying you've been playing games for a long time, and mainly you just don't do combat now. And Jay talks a lot about how D&D doesn't really have rules for when you're not in combat, but people talk about those parts of their campaigns as some of their favorites. You have a D&D session where you don't have any combat, you just talk to each other and people around the world. I'm that's Wanderhome. That's what Wanderhome is.
Yeah.
You're already playing it when you're playing your favorite D&D.
I like to joke, it's like when you play a session without ending up rolling any dice, it's very much kind of targeting that specific sense of digging deep into the world, right? Kind of just allowing yourself to immerse into it. And that, I think there, it's not for everyone. Of course, no game is for everyone, right? There's a lot of games I don't like. Certainly most games are not for grubby. But I do think like Wanderhome, like it's a very different approach, but it is also, I think, a very like it has the ability to feel to allow you to get at new ways of looking at the game. Like especially if you've been playing games for a while, it's like, oh, this is you've maybe not run a game this, it kind of pushes you out into a different zone of play.
Yes, and I like the idea that as you said, you eventually get to a point where you want more storytelling, and Wanderhome is those social interactions. It's the storytelling that you're doing and the combat heavy games. Does that mean that as Wanderhome, as a project and as a finished game, was this the game that you both had needed or wanted that was unavailable, or was this just something deep in the heart that you needed to get out?
I think Wanderhome, not so much itself as a game, but Wanderhome as like a world and a conception. Like as a like I started working on it at the start of quarantine, just for like an emotional state context on like where the whole world was, at the end of March in 2020, right? Like that was kind of the environment that started Wanderhome. And so a lot of it was like this kind of like, wow, what if it was possible for there to be a better world than this one? Like, what if it was possible to imagine a world in which people were kinder to each other, where like healing is possible? And I think also there's a lot of like our own homes and our own childhoods and our like the landscapes we grew up in the rural Hudson Valley, where Wanderhome visually is that as well.
Sure.
Yeah, I would say that like mechanically, Wanderhome did not come from like a game design perspective. Like, I don't think Jay was like, I think there should be a game with no violence and no DM and very few rules. I think like the way that your game design brain works is like you wanted to make a kind game and you thought about it really, really, really hard, and then all of those systems emerged from like the whole aesthetic and vibe of kindness or whatever.
Yeah, I was like, wow, wouldn't it be nice if, there was moss by the riverbeds and there are people who walk around on the moss and like have a little beetle caravan that they take across a stone bridge. And
Right,
then
but then because
but
you're like, well, if I'm making the Moss Bridge game, well, no one should have swords, and
yeah, well,
that's the system.
Well, what happened was I wrote down the possibility space for like things that I was interested in happening, where I was like, if someone does something, what's the worst case scenario I can imagine, and what's the best case scenario I can imagine? And like the worst case was that they give something up to help someone else, and the best case was like making the world a better place if only for a moment. And I was like, okay, there's not like that kind of cuts out most of like that is a very different possibility space than what most games are working with, right? Where like if you do that same exercise for most other games, you get a very different spread. And so it was like, well, Wanderhome, if I want to capture this emotional spread, I need to make a game that is built that way. Yeah, I spent just like 3 days in the hole just visualizing.
3 days. Nice. I picked 3 days. I like to write and tell stories, and my process after 3 days, I got too much in my plate. Like I've got like 6 different chapters spread out, and I got to bridge them all together, and I can't just like power through anything anymore. That's hell. All right,
I'm very fortunate. This is my full-time job.
yeah, that's amazing. Any advice on that? I know that there are plenty of our listeners who really like the idea of jumping in. So, as your full-time job, is there any advice that you can offer to kind of help those feel more confident stepping into this career, this line of work?
Well, just to be flippant, have you tried being really smart and then really lucky? Like the luckiest person who has ever lived.
Yeah, it is. It is unfortunately true that getting into tabletop games is a lot like getting into any other creative industry right now. And like if you truly want to be like, I think, okay, the best advice I ever got was from Avery Alder very early on, where she sat me down and she was like, genuinely visualize what you actually want to be doing. Because I think a lot of people are like, I would like to be a full-time tabletop person. And it's like, okay, what does that mean to you? Because if your answer to that is, I want to be publishing games, so you want to be a full-time small businessman, right? You want to run a company full-time. That's what, like, I want to be a tabletop game writer. Okay, you want to be a writer. Cool. Like, that is, like, being a full-time writer is like a thing that we conceptualize in our culture, right? Like, it's just as hard as being a full-time writer in any other discipline, right? Like, I think nailing down what is it you actually want to be, and then taking steps towards being that, not just in the kind of nebulous, oh, I want to do stuff in tabletop games, but like, I want to publish my own games on a crowdfunding platform and handle the logistics and distribution of that. And if that's what you want, which is bizarrely what I want, then you can pursue that. But you have, and like, to pursue that then is the kind of, it is the same as any other industry, where it's like, if you want to be a full-time content creator for tabletop games, there are a ton of other content creators in other industries who have followed that path in their own way, and it's a very similar shaped path, right? If you want to be, like, whatever that path is, it's not unique to tabletop games, but you have to understand like what it is you are visualizing, and that like it is also going to involve luck and charm and like just not good time management. It is I think like I will say though, I know that sounds all very negative. I do think tabletop games are in a kind of unprecedented position than they've been ever, where it's like they are a genuinely growing field in terms of industry and in terms of community. And like, if that is something you want to do, it is certainly something worth doing. I strongly encourage people, like, a thing that I see happen very often to people I care about and are good designers is they'll go, I want to design a tabletop game. That means I have to put out a book. Therefore, I'm going to create a small business and run a crowdfunding campaign and then manufacture and distribute a book. And they do all that and they get super exhausted and they never do anything again, because that is an incredibly tiring process to open and operate a small shipping company.
Yeah.
And like, I think people should understand that, like, if your goal is a physical object that you are shipping out to other people, that's what's involved. But that doesn't have to be your goal. You can create goals that fit within what you actually want, right? Like, if what you want is to put your games up online and have people pay money for them, there are many ways to approach that which don't require kind of, going fully into the industry, right? Like, finding what you're actually looking for and seeking that, I think, is going to leave people feeling much more satisfied, and is my kind of big piece of advice.
I think the nice advice that we give people and the like easier advice is like tabletop is a really small tabletop is a small industry, and if you want to get into it, just get into it. Like, there's a lot of people talking about tabletop all the time. Meet some of them that you think are cool and make good stuff, and just make good stuff with them, and then keep talking about it. And that is like a pretty low barrier to entry.
Yes, yeah. It is basically true that in any indie tabletop space, like r/RPG, Twitter, TikTok, you can find people who are passionate and excited about game design. You can find small community discords, you can access those. And like, yeah, just having fun making stuff and meeting people is the like is like, people like, that's the thing you really want to get out of it, right? Like, if you're making things that people like and having fun meeting people and exploring that world, that I think is some of the most worthwhile stuff you can be doing. And I really heartily encourage, like, join a Discord, right? Join a, follow a tag on Twitter, follow people you admire, go on, interact with them, go on Reddit, wherever you want to hang out, whatever it is.
Yeah, there's a wealth of information out there, and I mean, a Google search away, you can generally find it and connect with those people that you really like. So, thinking about how you're really coming at this from both the designer and business aspect, does that leave you a whole lot of time to still play either in your live action role play games or at tabletop games, or are they just
No.
now in the back burner? Back burner.
Huge back burner.
After our
Jay,
most recent,
when was the last time you played a game that you didn't write?
So actually, after our most recent crowdfunding, I had such a bad case of burnout that I refused to write anything and just played games that other people wrote for like 5 months. So I will have you know that the most recent time I played a game that I didn't write was like 2 weeks ago, and it was a Jenna Moran game about being rats climbing around in a magic city, and it was pretty good.
Okay, but tell me for posterity that that's rare. Tell me.
Okay, the thing you have to understand is that when you do this thing full time, playing games for fun is like an active choice you have to make. And I've learned the hard way that if I don't make that active choice, I feel miserable and I stop enjoying games. But like you can't like when I was doing it as like a hobby and I was like, it was like, oh, is this, like after work I write a little bit, right? I view like, oh, I'll just play games with my friends when I play games with my friends. And now that I've like kind of like it's not good for you when you work in this hobby and you forget why you like it. And so it's like, okay, in order to remind myself why I like it, I have to play games, but I have to make the active conscious choice to play games for fun. Like I have to like carve out time from my life to be like, this is not work, this is play. Because the problem with work and play, and like this is true in actual play as well, this is a huge thing that I hear a lot of my content creator friends talk about, is that like when you go on podcasts and APs and live streams and you're playing games all the time, it stops being fun, it just becomes performance. And the same thing is true for playtesting. And it is really like you do have to actively carve out time. Also, otherwise you get stagnant. You get kind of caught in your own head about it. So yeah, I try to really like be like, no, I am actively making time to play games with people.
I like that. I carve out a very specific schedule just to play, and it's actually a sacred time. It's the time at the end of my week that I like to hang out with my friends. It doesn't matter if we're business partners or just friends, random people on the internet. We sit down between 5 to 7 p.m. and we game until at least 10, and that's it. If people can't make it, I get irritated.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my relaxed time. That's what I do. I'm the forever DM, and I hardly get a chance to play. It's still relaxing to sit down and do it. So
yeah, you have to like. I think that like you have to treat play as a priority. Like you have to like. There's a certain point where you just have to view like having fun as like is part of your schedule, and that's very workaholic brain of me. But it is also just true that like. That a lot of like sometimes I like to joke that like I'm in it for a long time, not for a good time. And part of what that means is just being like, all right, here's my schedule, and half of the day is going to be spent either reading books or doing nothing or playing games, and like that is like that is sacred time, right? You kind of have to carve that.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I'm monitoring time here, I guess I don't know. I don't want to call it a two-part question. I know, Ruby, you said that you're not much of a games person, but
See?
It's okay. It's okay. Out of everything that you've had experience with and everything that you guys have been interested in, what is the one game genre that you have no desire to play, either again or to even investigate for the first time? And then what is the one that you absolutely want to try, but just can never seem to get into it?
I think for I never say never to anything because I feel like a game text, right? Like especially in the context of tabletop, a game text is only one component of kind of the process of playing. Right? Like if a cool like if a cool butch lesbian came up to me and was like, look, we're gonna play GURPS, and it's gonna be amazing. And like, I can run GURPS better than anyone else. Like GURPS is not usually my thing, but like, yeah, I'd give it a shot. I'd certainly see what the big deal is about. Like, I'd and like, so I think like I tend not to draw. I will say, I think games like Pathfinder First Edition or like D&D 3.5 that are like very much about like feats and character customizations and like lots of little numbers getting added to very long sheets are real. It is. I don't believe there's anything new for me to find fun in 3.5 or its equivalents.
I loved 3.5.
You liked that? You played it? You liked it?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
You sicko?
Okay, I know.
Oh,
You know
throwing shade.
you know how the whole problem with games for me is that I never know what my character wants to do
Yes.
or say.
Oh.
Like, so in 3.5, I'm like, I'm going to do one of my 3 feats that actually does something. Very simple. Solves the problem for me.
It does give you all of that.
Like, I play a barbarian every time, or the other one, a warlock with a big sword.
That's
simple.
I think
Simple.
that's I think you're thinking of 5th edition.
Well,
Or no,
warlock for 5th, barbarian for 3.5.
Oh, I see. I understand.
I like to play the barbarians because I can turn off my brain and just roll massive damage.
Exactly.
Yes.
You get it.
In college, I played a barbarian. I think wasn't intentionally named after you, but I did name the character. No, I did name it intentionally after you, didn't I?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah,
this
I
was
did.
Before we were close, but you were
I was just like,
I know this weird person.
Yeah, exactly. I was just like, that's weird. Let me name my barbarian after this princess with a 13-year-old princess with an axe that was like twice her size. Anyway, all that is to say, never say never. Probably nothing really crunchy that like requires a lot of character customization choices. I always want to be playing more of the weird story games. Like, you can find a lot of stuff like kind of hidden on like the back, like the back corners of forums or whatever, that are like these absolutely bizarre games about like, I don't know, like that have these very like interesting, very unique mechanics. And I never quite kind of self-justify it to play, because I'm always like, what if they're not fun? Like, I want to give them a try. So I think games like those are the ones where I'm like, I want to carve out more time for those, but I never seem to. What about you,
Games
Grubby?
so most games, just based on principle, and all my friends know this. My partner got the big Gloomhaven box last winter, and all of us said that we would try and play it with him, but God, my friends suffered through that, and I sat on the couch drinking a cocktail. I wouldn't even touch it. So like games that I will not touch, almost all of them. Games that I would love to try, when I got into this industry, because again, like I'm only here by accident because I am really good at making beautiful books, and I'm kind of a nerd. So when I got into the industry, I would like back random Kickstarters to just, give back to the community and like see what was going on and, be conversational in my field. And I would love to ever get into any of those things. Like I have the like a very fancy version of Shing's Amending, and I would love to open the box someday.
Yeah.
That would be great for me.
Yeah, I'd love to play Jiangxi. That is a good point. Yeah, there's a lot of like games where I'm like, this is a beautiful, interesting game.
Right, like I got it because my friends made it, and then I didn't play it because this job is insane.
Yes, and it is also just truly like, for me at least, I struggle to play online often, and so the past 2 years have been like having to reinvent a new way of approaching games just to like play them. And so there's a lot of games where it's like I would gladly, like, if I was just hanging out with a few folks from camp, or it was like whatever, you know what I mean? Like there's very like just like we're sitting around, it's like, oh, let's play a game for a couple hours, gladly pull one of these out, but I'm not going to organize the thing online for them. And I think that's really that kind of has forced me into my comfort zone a bit more than I would like it to.
That's crazy. And I remember when when all the lockdowns happened in our area, that's when I decided to really start Epic Table Games, which is funny. The idea initially started with building a gaming table to solve the issues that I was having at the in the physical space. When everything shut down, I was like, how do we move this to something we can still do? So I moved it to online. But I didn't like the Discord aspect, so I did play by post, which, that harkens way back to the early 90s when that's what I used to do, is play by post.
Me role playing on the Neopets.
Yeah. So we kind of fell back to that, and obviously things grow from there. And it's been a journey, and that I absolutely love, and I love what it's been able to allow me to connect with individual creators and groups of people who do things like you guys do, and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
And again, thank you for taking the time to connect. I don't really have a whole lot of words. I know that what I want to say is hard to express. There's a lot of gratitude. I really feel it. So with the time there, I know it's about 45 minutes, which is our it's a good cutoff for our listeners. I've noticed metrics.
It's what they like.
Yeah, that's what they love.
Like.
Yeah. So thank you very much, both of you. I hope to stay in touch. And is there any last word that you would like to give our audience?
Follow us on Twitter and check out our website, possumcreekgames.com.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're coming out with some cool new stuff.
Oh yeah, we have an announcement in a couple weeks, which might even be an announcement. I don't know when this episode is coming out, but might be sooner. Saturday. Okay, the announcement in a couple weeks. We'll see. We've got some cool stuff coming in down the line. So
well, I'll make sure to keep an eye on it, and when I see it, I'll pass it on to everybody that I know.
Hell yeah, thank you.
Hell yeah. All right, take care. Have a good one. See y'all later.
Make way for the paladins. Make way for the paladins. Epic table games. Make way for the paladins. Make way for the paladins. Epic table games. Thank you for listening to the Epic Table Games audio show with the Paladins of Podcasts, Rob and Josh. Until next time, stay in touch on Facebook at Epic Table Games and online at epictablegames.com.